Abdulaziz ibn Abdul Rahman Al Saud was born in Riyadh around 1875, into the House of Saud, a family whose power was rooted in a strict alliance with Wahhabi Islam. He grew up in the Najd, learning the ways of the desert, the skills of a warrior, and the traditions of his people. But his childhood was marked by turmoil. The House of Saud was locked in a bitter struggle with the Al-Rashid family, backed by the Ottomans. Abdulaziz witnessed his family's decline and the constant threat of war, forging in him a steely determination. Life was harsh, governed by codes of honor and survival. He became an expert horseman, marksman and fighter, skills essential for leadership in Arabia. His education combined Quranic instruction and Wahhabism with lessons in statecraft and warfare from his father. These experiences instilled in him a burning ambition to restore his family's lost glory. The stories of his ancestors were not just history, they were a call to action. While others might have accepted exile, Abdulaziz saw it as a temporary setback. He spent his youth observing, learning, and planning. The hardships did not break his spirit. They sharpened his focus. He was determined to reclaim his family's patrimony and re-establish the Saudi state. Abdulaziz's early years shaped him into a leader ready for the monumental task ahead. The desert had forged a young lion in exile, waiting for his moment to strike. The second Saudi state's decline began with internal divisions and fratricidal conflict after Faisal bin Turki's death. The Al-Rashid of Ha'il, seizing the opportunity, expanded their power and eventually defeated the Saudis at the Battle of Mulaida in 1891. Abdulaziz's father, Abdul Rahman, was forced to abandon Riyadh, and the family became exiles. Wandering the harsh deserts, they faced danger and scarcity before finding sanctuary in Kuwait. Sheikh Mubarak al-Sabah of Kuwait granted them asylum, seeing the Saudis as potential allies. In Kuwait, Abdulaziz was exposed to new ideas, diplomacy, international politics, and the power of alliances. He observed Sheikh Mubarak's statecraft and learned valuable lessons about navigating regional geopolitics. Despite relative safety, Abdulaziz never lost his desire to return home. Exile became a period of preparation. He listened to news from Najd, tracked resentment against al-Rashid rule, and honed his leadership. He gathered loyal followers and nurtured the dream of a triumphant return. The shame of exile fueled his resolve to reclaim his birthright. Abdulaziz's legitimacy was rooted in Riyadh and his family's religious mission. Every hardship in exile became a lesson for the future. The stage was set for his return. By 1901, Abdulaziz was ready to act. With support from Sheikh Mubarak, he assembled a small, loyal force, just 40 to 60 men. Their mission crossed the desert and retake Riyadh from the Al-Rashid. The journey was perilous, with setbacks and months of hardship in the desert. Abdulaziz's charisma and confidence kept his followers united. On January 15, 1902, he and his men reached Riyadh, scaling the city walls under cover of darkness. They waited for the Rashidi governor Ajlan to emerge from the Mazmak fortress at dawn. In a swift, fierce attack, Ajlan was killed, and the garrison surrendered. The people of Riyadh rejoiced at the return of the Al Saud. Abdulaziz's father was proclaimed Imam, and Abdulaziz became Emir of Najd. This bold act was a turning point signaling the resurgence of the House of Saud. The recapture of Riyadh became legend, establishing Abdulaziz as a fearless leader. Arabia had a new contender for power. With Riyadh secured, Abdulaziz needed a unified fighting force to expand his rule. His answer was the Ikhwan, a movement to settle nomadic Bedouin into agricultural communities and transform them into disciplined soldiers. The Ikhwan were indoctrinated with strict Wahhabism, replacing tribal loyalties with religious zeal. Their allegiance was to God and Abdulaziz, as Imam, giving them fanatical courage in battle. The Ikhwan became the shock troops of Abdulaziz's campaigns, conquering vast territories between 1912 and the late 1920s. They defeated the Al-Rashid and captured Ha'il in 1921, then turned west to the Hejaz, taking Mecca and Medina by 1925. However, their fanaticism became a liability when they wanted to continue jihad into British-protected lands. Abdulaziz, seeking stability, clashed with the Ikhwan's leaders. In 1929, at the Battle of Sabila, he crushed their rebellion with modern weapons. The Ikhwan's power was broken, and Abdulaziz emerged as the uncontested ruler. The Holy Army had served its purpose, and its time was over. Abdulaziz now faced the challenge of uniting a fractured land. The next phase of conquest would require both force and diplomacy. Unifying Arabia took Abdulaziz 3 decades of war, alliances and strategy. After securing Riyadh, he focused on defeating the Al-Rashid, capturing Ha'il in 1921, and becoming master of Central Arabia. He then turned east, capturing Al-Hassa from the Ottomans in 1913, gaining control of the Persian Gulf Coast and new revenue sources. The Anglo-Saudi Treaty of 1915 recognized his rule and set boundaries with British protectorates. The greatest prize was the Hejaz, home to Mecca and Medina, ruled by Sharif Hussein. By 1925, Abdulaziz's Ikhwan had conquered the holy cities and the port of Jeddah, elevating his status in the Islamic world. To secure his domain, Abdulaziz used both force and diplomacy, ruthless with enemies, generous with those who submitted. Strategic marriages to leading families created powerful alliances and kinship ties. These relationships were crucial for maintaining loyalty and stability in a land long divided. Abdulaziz's blend of military might and political acumen unified the peninsula. The foundation of a new kingdom was laid. Arabia was no longer a patchwork of tribes, it was becoming a nation, the next step, forging a modern state. By the late 1920s, Abdulaziz ruled the Nejd, Al-Hassa, and the Hejaz, regions with distinct histories and cultures. For years he governed them separately, but the challenge was to forge a single nation. There were no modern institutions, and the state's income depended on pilgrimage revenues and customs duties. Abdulaziz ruled as a patriarch, holding daily councils where any subject could petition him. On September 23, 1932, a royal decree merged his territories into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The new name signaled a state defined by dynasty, not region. This act established the political boundaries and national identity of modern Saudi Arabia. State building began. Ministries of finance and foreign affairs were created and technology like automobiles and radios introduced. Abdulaziz sought to replace tribal loyalties with national identity, a challenge that would persist. The founding of the kingdom marked the culmination of his 30-year struggle. Saudi Arabia's journey as a modern nation-state had begun. The desert emir had become king. Now the search for stability and prosperity would define the new era. In its early years, Saudi Arabia was poor, relying on Hajj revenues that plummeted during the Great Depression. King Abdulaziz needed a new source of income to modernize his kingdom. In 1933, he granted an oil concession to Standard Oil of California, choosing the Americans over the British. Years of fruitless drilling followed until 1938, when Dammam No. 7 struck a massive oil reservoir. Oil gushed forth, changing Saudi Arabia's fate forever. World War II delayed large-scale production, but after the war, oil revenue surged. This wealth transformed the kingdom, funding roads, hospitals, schools, and infrastructure. It allowed Abdulaziz to provide for his people and cement his rule. Oil became the economic foundation of the Saudi state. The black gold ensured the kingdom's survival and prosperity. Abdulaziz's gamble had paid off beyond imagination. Saudi Arabia was now a player on the world stage. King Abdulaziz's leadership blended tradition and modernity. He ruled as a desert sheikh, charismatic, accessible, and devout. His legitimacy rested on his role as protector of the holy cities and champion of Wahhabism. He mastered tribal diplomacy, regularly consulting leaders and scholars in his daily majlis. This open court fostered loyalty and managed dissent. Abdulaziz was pragmatic, embracing technology and foreign expertise to modernize his realm. He placed his sons in key positions, intertwining the state and royal family. This dynastic rule ensured stability and a clear line of succession. While power was concentrated, it kept the kingdom united during its formative years. Abdulaziz's governance set the tone for Saudi Arabia's future. His legacy would shape the kingdom long after his death. King Abdulaziz died in 1953 after more than 50 years of transformative rule. He began as an exiled prince and ended as the founder of a powerful nation. His greatest legacy is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia itself, a unified state forged from warring tribes. The alliance between the Al Saud dynasty and Wahhabi Islam remains the kingdom's foundation. The discovery of oil during his reign set Saudi Arabia on a path to wealth and modernization. His decision to welcome American oil companies secured the country's economic future. Abdulaziz was a unifier, modernizer, and autocrat, building a state in his family's image. He left a system balancing tradition and modernity, religion and politics. More than 70 years later, Saudi Arabia still bears the indelible imprint of its founder. The young lion in exile became the father of a nation.